We have seen how we can return an array as methods output. We have seen that we can also use a for loop to iterate over the array. Now you can also use a while loop or any sort of loop to iterate over an array, but there is another type of, or like another variation of for loop that is going to be easier to use specifically with arrays. This is called the enhanced for loop. And the enhanced for loop is going to work the same, but by providing you an easier way to loop over the array. So instead of writing the full loop conditions, it's going to be a shorter version that does the same job. So if I look at an array of integers called my numbers and I want to sum up those numbers, so I will define an integer sum to be 0, and then what I will say is for any integer, I'm calling that integer num, and then the colon says in my numbers. So how we read this is for an integer num in my numbers, I need to add that num to my current sum, and then my sum is going to be the sum of all of those integers. Now you cannot use enhanced for loops in every case. There are certain conditions that have to be present in order for you to be able to use the enhanced for loop. So we can use the enhanced for loop only if we are accessing the entire array. So you cannot use the enhanced for loop to access the first half or the second half or somewhere in the middle. It has to access the entire array. This is the first condition. The second condition is you will only be reading array elements. You will not be able to modify any of the elements of the array. And the last thing is you are not caring about keeping track of the index, which is usually the case for additional processing. So let's go back to our code and try to replace this for loop with an enhanced for loop that is going to give us the same result as this for loop. So let's just run this for loop again and see how it performs. So it's going to ask us that about how many elements do I want. Now just notice a typo here, so we can fix this. And I will say, for example, I want just 3 elements, 3, 7, and 2, for example. Now I got my elements printed here, and these elements are printed using this for loop. So let me take this for loop out and try to define an enhanced for loop. So what I will do is I will say for an integer, let me call this num. Again, this can be any name, and this column says in. And where am I looking? I'm looking at this array, which is called numbers. So for an integer num in numbers, I will open and close my curly brackets, and what I will do is I want to print something. Now what do I need to print at every stage is the number, so I can just say print num. And let's run this back again. How many elements do you want? I want 3. And if I recall, we used 3, 7, and 2, and we get the same thing using the enhanced for loop. Now the enhanced for loop, as we said, is going to work perfectly with arrays, but you have to keep in mind of the 3 conditions. You have to access the entire array, and you are only reading the elements, and you are not requiring the index for further processing.